Whoa, let me make sure I have everything first. Sunglasses check, hat check, Pepsi check, vape check, notes check, thick skin check, and sources check. Man, let's go. Welcome back to Golden Blued, everybody. If you're a college football fan, you already know what to do. Hit the like and subscribe button because that's all we do here. Also, go check out our Patreon page. A lot of great perks over there. We have exclusive live shows for the Patreons, discounts off the merchandise store, live streams with college football games, and don't forget about the score prediction contest. Golden Blued is still rolling well past 9,000 subscribers, but we have a goal of 10,000 subscribers by the kickoff of the Backyard Brawl. That is September 1st. I know we can do it, but we can't do it without you hitting the subscribe button. You know, we all know that Notre Dame loves to be independent. That's a fact. They love being independent. But we've also heard that Notre Dame has been thinking about joining the ACC as a full-time member, including football. Even Notre Dame fan boards and Twitter and all the social media outlets were saying that Notre Dame is seriously contemplating about joining the ACC full-time. And then there was a stretch where Notre Dame was interested in the Big Ten. To be honest with you, Notre Dame has turned down the Big Ten many times. But because of conference realignment and all the money that's at stake, a lot of people thought that Notre Dame was going to actually join the Big Ten. But as it stands, Notre Dame is still independent, and they've come out and said that they're going to stay independent if they can draw a $75 million a year payout. And I think they'll be able to accomplish that. So Notre Dame isn't going anywhere, in my opinion. I think they're going to stay independent. They will draw at least $75 million a year in payouts. One of the questions that I get asked is, why does Notre Dame like being independent? Do they just like being special and being a national brand? Well, all that's true, and I would say yes, but there's also other things, other perks about being independent. The main one is being able to do your own schedule. You're not relying on a conference to come out with your schedule. They can do it themselves. Now, you do have to take into consideration home and home, so if you play somebody at home this year, you got to play them on the road. You can't just keep scheduling home games every year. But if you look at their schedule, Notre Dame usually has 4 road games a year, sometimes 5, but never more than 5, usually 4. I mean, look in 2021, here's what their schedule looked like. At Florida State, Toledo, Purdue, Wisconsin, in Chicago, Cincinnati, at Virginia Tech, USC, North Carolina, Navy, at Virginia, Georgia Tech, and at Stanford. That is not a tough schedule at all. That's one of the perks of being independent. You don't have to play a brutal schedule. And with Notre Dame's brand, that doesn't matter. A lot of people like to say, who have they played? Well, with Notre Dame, it doesn't matter. Their brand is so strong. If they finish the season with 1 loss or undefeated, they're headed to the playoffs. People forget, even though it's been a while, Notre Dame does have 11 national championships. Their last national championship, 1988, when they beat my West Virginia Mountaineers. Let's look at 2022. The first game at Ohio State. That proves you wrong, Golden Blue Dude. That's a home and home that Notre Dame scheduled. So they're going to go on the road to Ohio State this year, but then next year they'll get Ohio State at home. So don't even throw that at me. There's some big time perks in scheduling Ohio State, even when it's a road trip, and you'll get the return home game next year. Ohio State draws in a ton of money, and you'll probably get game day this year in Columbus, and then next year you'll get game day in South Bend. So they start off the season at Ohio State, then they get Marshall, then Cal, then at North Carolina, BYU in Las Vegas, Stanford, UNLV at Syracuse, Clemson, Navy in Baltimore, Boston College, and at USC. It is tougher than usual because of the road trips to Ohio State and USC, but USC is on the rebound. They're supposed to be much better under Lincoln Riley. Last year, USC was trash. So it all depends on how good these teams are as well. So this year, they're going to have 5 road trips, and in 2023, they're going to have 5 road trips. 2023 could be one of Notre Dame's tougher schedules because they have at Clemson, at Stanford, at Duke, at Louisville, and at NC State. So I'd say 4 of those road trips are going to be tough. At Duke's probably the only really easy one they have on there. But all in all, Notre Dame has complete control over their schedule. That's why they never have a particularly brutal schedule, because they're in control. Well, it's come out that Stanford might be going independent. Let's look at the independents as of right now, today. Notre Dame's independent. BYU's independent, but they're headed to the Big 12. Army's independent. Liberty's independent, but they're headed to Conference USA. New Mexico State, they're independent, but they're headed to Conference USA. UMass is independent, and UConn is independent. Out of any of those brands, who does Notre Dame really have to compete with as far as brand goes? BYU? Maybe, but BYU is still considered a partial group of 5 team, I guess, until they get into the Big 12. Notre Dame is firmly considered a Power 5 team. Stanford has established itself as a Power 5 team. If they go independent, there's no, they look like a group of 5. They could be considered a group of 5 like people were saying with BYU. They have established themselves and they are a Power 5 team. So going independent, maybe that's a brand that could challenge Notre Dame as far as being special. I don't think Notre Dame will like that, especially Stanford being a rival. That would be the same thing as, say, a USC going independent. They wouldn't like that at all. Notre Dame likes to be special. They like to be the big boys on the block whenever it comes to being independent, and Stanford could possibly challenge them. Now, Stanford, I think they have other options. I think they could potentially go to the Big Ten, although what I'm hearing is that hinges on Notre Dame. But I don't think Notre Dame's going to join the Big Ten. So it looks like Stanford, there's a real possibility that they could go independent. That's if the Pac-12 falls apart, and I think the Pac-12 will fall apart. August 1st, whenever Brett Yormark takes over officially at the Big 12, I think we'll see some announcements of some new members of the Big 12 coming from the Pac-12. So that's just another step towards the demise of the Pac-12. And I think Oregon and Washington will be gone soon. The only reason they're even sticking around now is because they're wanting a huge cut, a huge percentage of this new TV deal. Otherwise, they're going to the Big Ten in the future. So I do think Notre Dame's probably a little upset that Stanford's thinking about going independent. And if Stanford actually goes independent, Notre Dame is not going to be happy about that. Notre Dame likes to be special. They like to be the brand, the independent brand. With Stanford could challenge that. And the thing is, Stanford and Notre Dame play each other every year. Could that add some extra prestige to that rivalry? That would be interesting. Independent Stanford versus independent Notre Dame. I actually like the sound of that. One of the biggest arguments against this is, I don't know about that going to Blue Dude. Stanford isn't Notre Dame. What about money? Stanford is loaded. And I don't think Stanford would have any trouble getting an amount close to what they want. I don't think they would get like the $75 million a year like Notre Dame can get. But I think they could easily get like a $50 million a year. And if there's no chance of them going to the Big Ten, $50 million a year is better than what they would get in the Pac-12 because they're wanting a higher percentage than 6 other teams in the Pac-12. But that still only pays out $33 million a year. So $50 million versus $33 million. And you can make your own schedule. You'd probably have to get an affiliate conference like Notre Dame has with the ACC. And I think Stanford could get an affiliation with the Big 10 or the Big 12, or if the Pac-12 stays relevant, they could be affiliated with the Pac-12 without being an actual member, and they can make their $50 million a year, maybe even more, maybe $60 million. I'm just saying I don't think they'll get to the $75 million. But whatever they get, I'm sure it'll be higher than what they have in the Pac-12. Now, in the future, if the door opens up for Stanford to get into the Big 10 without Notre Dame, then they're going to take that. That's hundreds of millions of dollars. Of course, they're not going to turn that down. But if that's not an option right now, their choices would be stay in the Pac-12 where they're going to get $33 million a year, or go independent where they'll probably get over $50 million a year. I think Stanford would choose to go independent. And no, Notre Dame would not be happy about that. They would still be the best brand in the independent circuit, and they would make the most money. But they don't like being upstaged and then having to play that team year after year after year because they're a rivalry. Yeah, I think that rivalry would heat up much more than what it is right now. That's a great idea as far as how this rivalry could heat up. Y'all let me know in the comments section. Do y'all think that Stanford stays in the Pac-12 for the foreseeable future? Or do you think that they can get to the Big 10 sooner rather than later? Or do you think they go independent? And do you think Notre Dame will not be happy if Stanford does go independent? That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you on my next show.